Hi there, it's Tara, she of all things transformational guidance coaching, transformational body work, and for our purposes here today, transformational yoga. So today we're going to focus on a pose that is a really fun pose to do. If you are familiar with yoga classes, you've probably done shoulder stand. As a kid, we would call it candlestick, yeah? So I would like to teach shoulder stand today in a way that empowers us to stay longer so that we really get to milk the benefits of the pose in a way that's healthy for the body, safe for the anatomy, and also gives us more potential for exploring the subsequent poses that go along with it. So I'm teaching it with blankets because that is common in Iyengar lineage, to use props to support ourselves in sarvāngāsana, the name of the pose, so that we protect our neck and we really get to stay longer. Having said that, I'm going to just read a few things about the pose in Light on Yoga, BKS Iyengar's Bible, of the yoga poses. He talks about the effects of this pose and refers to it as the mother of all poses. This pose can sometimes be referred to also as the queen of all poses, and often is done in conjunction with headstand, Shirshasana. So, a few things about the pose before we get started. Okay, so in talking about the effects of this pose, he says that the importance of sarvāngāsana cannot be overstated. It is one of, quoting, okay, because this is how good it is. It's one of the greatest boons conferred on humanity by our ancient sages. It is the mother of asana. I'm going to skip a lot of this because it is long, okay? But I'm going to skip a bunch and we're going to get to some of the most important points. This pose has a direct effect on the endocrine system, and especially on the thyroid and hyperthyroid. It is excellent for people suffering from breathlessness, palpitations, asthma, bronchitis, throat ailments. It is good for headaches, maybe not in the moment, but chronic headaches can disappear over time with the practice of this. Can be excellent for eradicating colds, and excellent for hypertension, irritation, shortness of temper, nervous breakdown, and insomnia. Can affect the abdominal organs, so the bowels move more freely, constipation vanishes, and it is a detoxifying pose, recommended for urinary disorders, menstrual issues, hernia, can be helpful for epilepsy, low vitality, anemia, and overall restores vigor and strength. And according to BKS Iyengar, happiness and confidence. New life will flow into the practitioner. The mind will be at peace and the person will feel the joy of life. After long illnesses, the practice of this asana regularly twice a day can bring back lost vitality. Maybe like, long COVID. Should not be done by people with high blood pressure. So if you're not convinced already, let's just do it and feel what it feels like to do the pose. I'm actually going to show it one time without props because I'd like you to see the comparison, and also you can do it and feel the comparison in your own body, okay? So to do it without props, we're just going to be flat on the floor, but you are going to need props for the practice today. You're going to need, I would say, a minimum of 3, maybe 4 yoga blankets, and reminder that you could use, really big beach towels if that's all you got, or some other kind of firm blanket. And then a yoga bolster. If you don't have a yoga bolster, you could use a firm couch cushion or something like that, okay? But for the first experiment, let's go flat on our backs. And from the position on your back, you're just gonna kind of scoot the shoulder blades in a little bit. Take a deep breath, exhale, and thrust the legs up. And then once you get up, you're gonna really walk the hands closer to the shoulder blades and see if you can get the legs to be as vertical as possible. This is the best I can do right now without props. So it's not bad, but you know, probably I wouldn't be able to stay here for much more than a minute. It's quite effortful in the arms, the wrists, the shoulders, and I can feel that my spine has flexion in it because I can feel the spinous processes kind of poking back. But worst of all, I can feel the neck kind of being overstretched here, which is really no bueno. So I'm not going to stay too much longer, neither should you. You felt it in your body, so you can release the legs down, knees over your face, bring the hands to the floor, and gently roll down. Take a breath, and then we'll roll to our side. Okay, so that was experiment number 1. Now for experiment number 2, I'm going to use the wall. And so a few things before I do this. I have a slanted wall here, which is actually really great for this pose, but a lot of you probably won't have that, right? So you can totally do this on a flat wall. You're just going to need to play with the distance that your bolster is to the wall. And so let me show you how this setup is working. I've got my 4 blankets here, and they're stacked, so they're folded in this shape, and they're stacked so the folded edges are slightly sloped, okay? So it's not straight up and down like a wall, but it's slightly sloped. And what happens when that is the case, we'll show it here with the bolster. Let's do the whole setup so you see, okay? What happens when that's the case is that I can drape my neck over that curve and hook the back of my occipital ridge, my cranium, on the blankets. And then when I thrust my legs up, my head will go back, but it'll just kind of rest on the floor. You want to make sure that there's a couple inches of space between the top of your shoulder and the edge of the top blanket. Okay? So now to do it against a wall, again, like I said, you're going to need to make sure that your bolster is the correct distance from your wall. And I'm going to set this up so you can see, because the wall is just an extra prop, and it makes the pose a little bit more accessible for people who maybe wouldn't be able to thrust their legs up. So this is kind of a, like a slightly more modified version of the pose. Okay, so I'm going to bring my hips to the bolster, sit and spin my legs up to the wall, and then just make sure I've got my occipital ridge here hooked on the edge of the blankets like I showed you. And then from here, I'll press my feet into the wall and start to walk the hands down towards the shoulder blades. Really tuck, 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 tuck those shoulder blades together. And you can bring the hands as close to the shoulder blades as possible, propping your back up with your hands. But guess what? I've got my feet on the wall, right? So it makes it so that this pose is much more accessible. And by bearing my feet into the wall a little bit, I can really get, a lot of lift in my sternum lifting, actually the bottom of the sternum lifting up, and my chest bone also moving back. So the chin lock is really strong here, Jalandhara Bandha. And then if one feels steady, of course, you could bring one or both feet off of the wall. So that's that version of the pose, and you're free to do it as long as you want. And of course, repeat often. And when you're ready to come down, you can just gently walk the feet down. You might pause for a second and then roll off to your side. And of course, be as slow as you need to be to come up. Now I'm going to show it just middle of the room. So I'm going to just bring the bolster, the butt end of the bolster, to the fringe end of the blankets. I like the folded end at my neck because I don't like to feel the fringe. My nervous system detects these things, right? So we want to go for good, better, best, always. Okay, so you're sitting on the bolster. You're going to kind of slide back and hook your skull, occipital ridge, on the edge of the blanket. Tuck the shoulder blades a bit. Take a nice deep breath. Exhale, and up the legs go. Now, you can see that it's much easier for my legs to get vertical here. When I walk my hands towards my shoulder blades, it takes a lot less effort. They're almost kind of inconsequential, actually. I mean, they're very helpful, but they're a lot less needed than they were when I was doing the pose flat on the floor. My neck curve is permitted to remain a curve, but I'm still honoring Jalandhara Bandha, one of the main benefits of the pose. And I have quite good verticality in my legs to sternum here. So I'm really contracting my gluteal muscles at the base of my hips, drawing the sit bones together and feeling the pubis bone move up to the midline between my feet. The feet are quite, I'm not pressing them together super strong, but they have an intentional impact, intentional, I would say, contact with each other. And I have life in the feet, so they're not just kind of like there, and consequentially, they are engaged. When you're here, you can breathe deeply. You can definitely use Ujjayi breath because we are in Shinlock, so Ujjayi is quite available. I should note that my spine has some flexion in it, as it did earlier, but not nearly as much. So the spinous processes along the ridge of my spine are much less pokey than they were before. Now, of course, there's a lot of variations on this pose. However, one of the most popular is doing plow pose, halasana. So in plow pose, you can fold, rotating the femur bones in the hip socket. So more or less from, the hip through the spine, I'm staying as I am. Maybe slight movement, but staying more or less as I am and bringing the legs back. It's very popular to land the feet on something. You can float them in air. If you land them on the floor and your back severely rounds, I might caution against that. I might suggest you don't let them come all the way down if the back severely rounds. But if the spine can stay fairly long with decent openness in the front of the body, you might consider bringing the feet down. And of course, again, you could bring them, say, to a chair seat or something. But we're really focusing today on shoulder stand. So in the Iyengar lineage, we would often be practicing this pose for, 5 to 10 minutes, sometimes even longer, sometimes even up to 20 minutes, so that we really get to milk the benefits of this pose. And doing it in this way with the blankets makes it quite easeful. The legs rather float up. The breath is available. You can almost go into a meditative state. So for the sake of the video, I'm going to come out of the pose. So I'm just going to bring the knees kind of over the face and help my hips gently roll down. There's a lot of ways to exit the pose, but however you do it, I caution, please don't crash down please allow yourself to, and invite yourself to come down with some control, okay? So a very nice treat that you can give yourself after this pose is you can scoot your body back so that this edge of the blanket is meeting the space just underneath your shoulder blades. When you do that, the shoulder blades will land softly on the floor. The chin will nestle down in the direction of the manubrium, the notch between the collarbones. You can close the eyes and you can take a few moments here to breathe. This is how I typically practice the pose and how I also typically teach it is after shoulder stand, we come into this. This is actually supported bridge pose. So Supta Sarvāngāsana. It's really beautiful to breathe here, to release and to absorb and digest the effects of the amazing shoulder stand. So for the sake of the video, I'm not going to stay as long as I normally would, but I encourage you to stay as long as your body feels content there. And remember, by the way, if you are using, 3 or 4 blankets and you found that level of supported back bend to be too high, you could always, just remove 1 or 2 blankets to do that finishing breathing pose. So I can't emphasize enough the importance of supporting the neck in this pose. It really is truly a very, very important piece. I did not know about that option for about 10 years of my practice. And I happily did shoulder stand, all the time on the floor. And it's still nice to just kind of, occasionally pop up and down into it. But I didn't know that the constant neck pain that I had was potentially correlated to the pose. And when I learned to do the pose with the blankets, not only did I find that I could stay so much longer, that it was effortless in certain ways, which enabled me to direct the effort more specific to the pose. So instead of kind of, working and keeping my body up, I could work on refining how I was experiencing the pose. But also, in not too long of an amount of time of practicing with blankets, I no longer had the neck issues that I had chronically had because I wasn't constantly overstretching those neck ligaments. So I really strongly recommend using the blankets. And if you do want to just play around with, down and dirty shoulder stand flat on the floor, no problem. But just make sure that you're keeping a little curve in the neck. At least do that for yourself. So I hope that you found this video to be helpful, that you're gaining some benefit from this. Please do all the things. You know what they are, right? So if you like the video, please give it a comment. Please share it with somebody who you think that could benefit from this. And of course, I would be ever so grateful for you to subscribe to my channel. I post yoga videos midweek, every week. And I also put up videos about working with our energy fields, our emotional intelligence, how we are creating, manifesting in our lives. So it will be so much fun to see you more here. Thank you so much. Namaste.